Hello, my name is JMS, and in 2016 I wrote a book called Toccata for the Unknown, and I will read chapter 1 here. While you listen to the first chapter, you will see some wonderful creations by Comcrafty. Comcrafty right now is running something called 12 Days of Christmas, where you learn how to do cards and see very many beautiful creations, like advent calendars, and you have to see it, and I highly recommend it. If you take part in the 12 Days of Christmas, she will have a giveaway in the end. If you win that, she will teach you how to do a gratitude journal, learning how to be grateful for what you have. This is part of positive psychology, and Comcrafty is a trained positive psychology coach. She attended courses at Yale and so on, and it's well worth winning this one. I do it myself, and it really has been a very great resource for feeling grateful for what you have, especially in these times. So if you want me to read chapter 2, please subscribe to the channel if you want to, and take part in 12 Days for Christmas, of course, also if you want to. And if enough people subscribe, then I will also read chapter 2. You will find a link to the first episode of 12 Days of Christmas. And if you are not listening to this from Comcrafty, there will be a link in the description to her channel. I hope you will have a wonderful day, and let's get into the book right away. Toccata for the Unknown by JMS. Chapter 1. An Unusual Sunday. I am a writer. I want to be one, or maybe I have been one. Something inside me needs to be a writer, to tell a story. Almost any story would do. I do not know why this is. Maybe my life had been too boring and I needed an outlet. A better life, even if that life was just an imaginary one. Most writers find a story somehow anchored in their own life, or take parts of it and interweave that into the writing. But that was nothing I could do. Not that I did not want to. I even thought I had some stories from my life that deserved to be told. The problem was I could not remember any of them. It was like a fog had emanated from some unknown place and obfuscated my past. I remember my childhood, the schools I had gone to and the jobs I had once had, but I could not remember the people I must have met and the interactions we would have engaged in. I sometimes tried to remember. I really tried, but I could not. It just did not come back to me from those deep memory vaults where they were locked up. So having got stomped in using myself as a template for a novel, I went out and tried to capture other people's stories and make them my own. That did not work either. Probably I could not dig deep enough to get something interesting out of them. Or maybe they had nothing interesting to say, even if that was probably not the case. I began taking walks in the city, chasing that elusive story I knew was out there. It was not a big city, as cities go, but big enough to wander endless hours in, looking for a place that might spark some inspiration, or a person that would at least get me started. Maybe I was just trying to escape the fact that my past was somehow lost, and I looked for an artificial one to take its place. However, I knew I would find one. Yes, I was almost sure of it. And that story would meet all my needs. Somewhere deep down inside of me, I knew that was a certainty. I went into every bar or restaurant I saw, ordered a beer, found a free table and sat down with my laptop, trying to get or conjure up a story. It did not work. People were either too drunk or what they talked about didn't interest me. One night, I decided to take another stroll, just walking aimlessly to see where my feet would take me during that dark and rather chilly post-evening. The daytime rain had driven most people indoors, leaving the city deserted, except for a few stray dogs that quickly got out of the way if you approached them. You could make out some other people, shadows huddling along to unknown destinations, defying, just like me, the cold and raw weather. It almost felt like I was walking through a cliché. Some French picture from the 1950s, a film noir made up of shadows alone. Underdressed, as always, I drew my thin jacket closer around me and walked a bit quicker to keep warm and get where I was going to a bit faster. Walking like this, I reached a street, not really famous for its public establishment. I passed a building I must have passed 100 times before without paying any special attention to it. But this night I did. It was a nondescriptive concrete building with bricks staring back at me from under the fallen render. Bricks that should have hit the ground a long time ago, but they were desperately hanging on, in defiance of gravity and Mother Nature. The front door was of glass, you know, the kind you mostly find in older restaurants. Not a whole pane like a modern door. Instead, this one had smaller glass panels, separated by wrought iron and lead. The building had no sign that gave away its purpose. It was just a building looking old and worn down. I do not really know why this particular place caught my attention. Perhaps it was just because I had never noticed it before, and that in itself created a reason. Using my way too long legs, I took 2 steps at a time and found myself standing in front of the door, peering in. The glass must have been slightly tinted, because as I got closer, a space spread out before me, where previously I had only seen my own reflection. It had an open layout filled with small round tables spread out across the large room. There were people scattered around, all of them in deep conversation, with a tired-looking waitress walking around delivering beverages. Everything had a yellow tint to it, from the glass but also from the lights within, creating the illusion of watching an old film in sepia. The inside looked cozy, dark wooden panels filled with an assortment of paintings and photographs. A classy but not an uptight place would be a good description of it. How have I managed to miss this? I thought to myself. Maybe it's a private club and that is why. A lot of fishy places in this city. My mind continued, trying to make sense of what I saw. Well, what can they do except throw me out? And with that thought, I opened the door and stepped in. The inside heat struck me, a nice change from the damp raw coldness outside. I found myself directly liking the place. You know those places you for no apparent reason just like. You feel good and don't really care why. Looking back, I think it was the normality of the place, a watering hole for the common man, together with that strange vibe the place had, which was somewhat a contradiction in terms. That it also seemed to lack the fashion-conscious crowd you so often see in the more hip places, that was just a bonus. A passing waitress nodded at me, which I took as an invitation to grab a table and sit down. However, all of the tables down here were occupied. Even the chairs were all busy, supporting one guest after another. Letting my eyes scan the place, I saw a staircase leading to an upper floor, with a pleasant and inviting yellow light streaming down the stairs. "Do you have tables up there?" I asked her. She nodded and waved her hand in that direction, showing me that I could go upstairs if I wanted to. She did this without ever uttering a single syllable. You know how some people can, without actually saying anything, convey a feeling or a direction just from the smallest change in their body language. I have always admired people like that. They have stripped away the ambiguity of language and gone back to a more basic form of communication. It sounds strange coming from a writer, but opposites attract, as the song or saying goes. I nodded and walked up the stairs. Here it looked much like it did downstairs, only a bar counter was lacking. Except for that, it was a mirror image of downstairs. Maybe not quite so many tables, and a bit fewer people, but it was not by any means empty, which meant that I would have an opportunity to watch people without getting distracted by a full house. I wanted to drink in the atmosphere, get some inspiration, but if I had been the only one there, it would have negated my purpose, well, actually made it pointless as a matter of fact. Had it been too full, that would not have worked either. Too many impressions. But here it looked like just the right amount of people. I do love restaurants or bar with a second floor. I find it gives any establishment a more relaxed feeling. You get away from the loudest people, you know, the ones who always decide to take possession of the first floor, where they can be seen. I sat down at a table, close to the stairs, so I could see everyone coming up, but still away from the center of attention. That would give me the best chance of observing, but not being observed myself. The table was a small wooden one, round with the patina of having been through many years, but without looking badly worn or cheap in any way. I thought it might have been made of oak, but it lacked the weight of it. It was sturdy without wobbling at all, just the way a good table should be. The chair was made of the same material, with a nice high backrest, furnished with a leather padding that made leaning back a real treat. While I waited for someone to come and take my order, I unpacked my laptop, arranged my bag and jacket on one of the chairs, leaving almost the whole table surface free for my computer. Only one object took some space, a small table lamp situated in the center, spreading its light without spilling any of it over the edge of the table. I liked that lamp. It had an Art Deco design with a silvery base that went up in straight angles until it disappeared under the yellow lampshade of glass. The shade only glowed faintly, directing most of the light down onto the table, creating a perfect round circle, which was in itself very Art Deco. I examined the lamp, trying to find the on-off switch, but my hands did not manage to find one. I tried to lift the lamp, but it was fastened to the table and did not budge 1 inch when I tried to move it. I really would like such a lamp at home. It had a quality that a lamp from IKEA lacked. IKEA was good for finding cheap things, but perhaps not for finding beauty or quality. Not in the sense that this lamp had, anyway. I left the investigation of the lamp and looked at my computer again. It was ticking away like a binary bomb, taking its sweet time to start up. So while it was doing its thing, I lifted my head to observe the other guests. It was a rather somber crowd talking in hushed voices, or that was my impression after a first brief glance around the room. I mainly saw shadows moving behind the table lamps, silhouettes given life by their apparent motion. Had they not moved, they would have been nothing more than an impression on the wall. It was interesting. I had never seen a phenomenon like that before. I tried to see how or what created it, but it did not matter how much I leaned to the right or to the left. They were still the same two-dimensional shadows from every angle. Leaving that unexplained illusion to itself, with my computer still starting up, I switched to watch the only other person I could make out, as they were sitting a bit closer to me. The darkness made it hard to see them, but at least they were not only silhouettes. I could make them out if I focused really hard, squinted my eyes, and then kept them open until they started to tear up. It was a mother and a child eating something out of a small glass bowl with a very long spoon. Had I not seen the spoons, I would have guessed they were eating a soup, but the only thing I knew you ate with such utensils was ice cream. The woman had a clock-shaped hat covering some curly hairs peeking out from under it. The boy, maybe 10, was wearing a suit which looked strange on such a young person. People taken from some bygone age rather than the modern one, I thought. I kept looking at them as they were the only ones I could make out. Finally, I could not stand it anymore. I had to see them close up. So I stood up and walked the few steps over to them. Excuse me, can you tell me where the bathroom is? I asked, the only feeble excuse I could come up with. The mother looked at me. The boy stared down at the bowl that now was empty. It's over there, she said, and pointed to a door in the wall, a door lacking any sign of its purpose. Thanks, I said and smiled. If you don't mind me saying so, I really admire your costumes. She just looked at me, did not smile, did not frown, just looked at me, like she did not understand the remark, or maybe she was waiting for me to continue. It felt like the silence kept going on forever, and I got rather uncomfortable. I did not know what else to say, and she just kept looking at me, with the boy still looking down. Anyway, thanks for the direction, I said when I could not stand it any longer. She nodded, and I turned and went back to my own table, feeling slightly embarrassed. Sitting down, I got another surprise. I could not see them any longer. The bowl and the spoons were still there, but they were gone. Had I seen them go to another table? That must be it, as they could not have left the room without passing me. Yes, I thought, I saw some new silhouettes moving against the far side of the room that had not been there before. The room was full of dark corners and fluttering motions, so I could not be sure, and the table lamps did not really help. I looked at the walls that seemed to have some black and white photographs, and what could have been some pastel paintings, that for all I knew were in vivid colors, but in this light it was impossible to tell. From somewhere came music, emanating from some cleverly hidden speakers, playing a tune I could not put my finger on. The volume, like the people, was toned down very low, so the only thing I could make out was the tempo. It sounded slow and somewhat melancholic to my ears, a blues or a slow jazz perhaps. Then the lyrics broke through for just a moment. Who are you, boy? Snap out of it, son, and face the music. Do you hear me? It sounded strange. The singing and the music were offbeat, did not match each other at all, but it soon faded back into the background noise again. Looking out through the window, I could not see anything of the outside, which made me think I was looking towards the back of the building. I switched position to look at the other wall, but it was the same there. They only presented the reflection of the room, nothing more. That was strange. The streetlights should have at least indicated their presence, but they didn't. Looking around, I could not see anyone to take my order, and my computer was still trying to boot up, so I had some time to spare. I thought the computer was rather slow today, slower than normal, but there is no way of knowing why a computer sometimes speeds up and sometimes, like now, speeds down. Using the time I had on my hands, and wise of my previous failure to engage in conversation, I went over to the window to solve the riddle of the lost streetlights. I looked out. It was total dark, showing no street below, as it should have been. But it also gave a good explanation why it didn't. Behind the window you could see bricks pressing up against the glass. It had for some reason or other been bricked up, or they had added a window against a bricked up recess. Maybe for aesthetic purposes, to give the illusion of some extra space to what otherwise amounted to a bunker. Content with at least solving that problem, I went back to my table and sat down. The waitress finally came, and I ordered my standard beverage of choice, a draft beer, but forgetting to ask about the window like I had intended to. Waiting for her question regarding what brand I wanted, I waited in vain, as it never came. She only nodded without bothering to ask me. She just accepted I wanted a beer and went to get me one. Wow, this really is the place for me. No stupid questions, no phony smiles or asking me how I'm doing without actually wanting to hear the answer. I thought to myself and felt pretty damn good about it. My laptop finally gave a ping informing me that it was time to log in if I wanted to use it. I did so, setting my computer off on another arduous journey to start up, playing its hard drive music as it went along. At some point I should defragment the hard drive, uninstall one of those numerous applications I had installed but never used, and do a proper cleaning of the fan. I was not really a computer wizard, but the time and the lack of money had taught me two things about laptops with Windows. They will only grow slower as time goes, and the fan will end up stuffed with dust. The heat from my own computer told me that the fan did not do its job anymore, and that meant I needed to clean it, sooner rather than later. Moving my eyes from the computer, I again tried to scan the place, but as the only persons I had been able to make out had moved, there wasn't really anything to watch. I tried to listen very carefully, to catch what the other guests were talking about, but nobody talked loud enough for that to work. For a split second I thought about moving to another table, getting closer to some of the other guests, getting within listening range. However, I decided against that. My first feeble attempt in making contact had failed, and listening into a private conversation might fail in a more painful way. No matter, I still had a good feeling about this place. As soon as I had my beer, I would get started on the novel, or rather, as it would be, the novel. I leaned back against the comfortable chair and inhaled deeply, getting ready to do something I had not managed to do in a long time, to do some actual writing.